I am 78 years old. I have been married for more than 50 years. And before you scroll past this video, there's something I need to say. Something I wish someone had told me a very long time ago. We are still husband and wife, but we are no longer friends. There was no divorce, no betrayal, no dramatic shock to tell other people about. From the outside, everything looked fine. We still live in the same house, still eat the same meals, still ask each other what needs to be bought, what needs to be done. No one has ever told us that this marriage has a problem. Our family says this is good enough. Friends say we are lucky to still be together. And we believe that too. But there's something that disappeared a long time ago. It didn't disappear in one day. It didn't disappear after a big argument. It disappeared very slowly, so slowly that you don't notice it. Until one day, you sit across from the person who has been beside you for half your life, and you no longer know what to say. We don't hate each other. We simply don't truly talk anymore. We no longer share the small details of our days. We are no longer curious about what the other person is thinking. We no longer feel the urge to share, even though we are still very close. And the frightening thing is this: no one ever warned us about this kind of loss. People teach you to watch out for arguments. They teach you to fear betrayal. But no one tells you that a relationship can die in silence. Some relationships don't fall apart because of conflict. They fall apart because of habit, because you start believing that this is good enough. And by the time you realize it, the distance has been there for a very long time. If a relationship can die without arguments, how do you know you're losing it? Back then, if you had asked me how my marriage was, I would have answered immediately fine. It truly was fine. We had clear routines. Breakfast at a certain time. Dinner at a certain time. Weekends followed patterns we had known for years. The house was always tidy. Not perfect, but tidy enough that no one complained. Clean clothes, an orderly kitchen, everything in its proper place. We still talk to each other every day. But when I look back, those conversations were almost always about tasks. Have you gone to the market yet? Do we have a doctor's appointment tomorrow? Has the electricity bill been paid? There were no arguments, no shouting, no day when I thought our marriage is terrible today. And because of that, I believed everything was still working. I used to think that this was what a long marriage was supposed to look like. That it couldn't always be deep. That there wouldn't always be something to talk about. I thought familiarity was the same as closeness. That as long as we were still beside each other, that was enough. People around us said the same thing. At least you're still together. Not fighting is a blessing. Where do you find someone who's been with you that long? Those words reassured me. They felt like confirmation that I was doing the right thing. But small things began to disappear. So small that no one noticed. We stopped telling each other the little stories of the day. Things that didn't really matter, but that we used to share. An annoying stranger, a careless remark overheard somewhere, a passing thought. We also laughed together less. Not because we were sad, just less. And I didn't realize that I had stopped being curious about the person living beside me. I no longer wondered what she was thinking that day. I no longer noticed what made her happy or tired. Everything happened very slowly, so slowly that I didn't call it a loss. It was just normal. Until one moment I realized something strange. We still spoke every day, but we no longer knew how to begin a real conversation. When silence becomes a habit, it isn't loud. It doesn't scare you right away. It's like background noise. At first you notice it. Then you get used to it. And eventually you don't hear it anymore. We stopped asking each other, "How was your day?" Not because we didn't care, but because we thought we already knew the answer. We stopped sharing our real thoughts, our uncertainties, our worries. We didn't know who else to talk to. Each of us had our own world, our own routines, our own thoughts, but we still shared one roof. I told myself, we've been together long enough. We don't need to talk so much anymore. Understanding each other should be enough. But understanding someone and truly being present with them are not always the same thing. There was one evening I remember very clearly. I had just heard an important piece of news. Not bad news, but something I would have told her first years ago. I walked into the kitchen. She was doing what she always did. Everything looked exactly like any other day, and I stood there, not knowing how to begin. Not because I was afraid, but because I suddenly realized it had been a very long time since I last opened my mouth to share something real with her. The feeling was hard to describe, like when you pick up your phone wanting to call someone close to you, but you're no longer sure that person is the first one you think of. That night, I said nothing. The news stayed in my head, and for the first time, I felt a very vague fear. Not the fear that we would separate, but the fear that we were still beside each other, yet no longer truly with each other. I began to notice the empty spaces, evenings where each of us sat in our own corner, meals with no stories attached, no one doing anything wrong, and because of that, no one knew where to begin fixing it. We didn't grow apart in a single day. We grew apart little by little over many years. For a long time, I told myself our problem wasn't serious, because if there were really a problem, surely there would be clearer signs. People argue when there are problems. They raise their voices, blame each other, hurt each other when something serious happens. We weren't like that. We didn't lack love. At least that's what I always believed. We still cared in very familiar ways, reminding each other to take medicine, telling each other to dress warmly, asking whether the other had eaten. But little by little, I began to understand something very hard to accept. The problem wasn't that we didn't love each other. It was that we were no longer together emotionally. Being beside each other is not the same as being connected. Living under the same roof is not the same as being present. There are couples who fight all the time. They hurt, but at least they can still reach each other. There are still emotions to collide with. Silence is different. Silence doesn't hurt right away. It just takes things away bit by bit. A big argument wounds you once. Prolonged silence slowly wears a relationship down a little more every day. We chose silence too many times, not because we were wise, but because we were tired. Tired of explaining, tired of opening our mouths, tired of saying things that might make the other uncomfortable. I let go of the questions I once wanted to ask. Are you still happy? What have you been thinking about lately? Is there something you haven't told me I kept feelings that should have been shared? Moments when I felt sad without knowing why. Moments when I felt lonely inside my own home. I told myself, let it be. tomorrow's is fine. There will be a better time. But that better time never came. We had many evenings sitting next to each other, the TV on, the lights bright, but each of us living in a different world. No one did anything wrong. No one intentionally abandoned the other. And that was what made it dangerous. Because when there's no clear fault, you don't know where to begin fixing things. There's a very hard truth that I only understood when it was already too late. No one ever said our marriage had a problem, and that was the problem. Society warns you about many things: infidelity, violence, divorce, but no one warns you about emotional coldness. No one tells you that a relationship can die without making any sound at all. No one tells you that you can lose each other even while still sleeping in the same bed. We believed that time would heal everything, that as long as we stayed together long enough, things would be fine. But time doesn't heal when you're not present. Time only makes distance feel more familiar. I began to look back on the years that had passed, not to assign blame, but to understand. I understood that we chose calm over connection, chose not to bother each other instead of stepping into each other's inner worlds, chose silence to keep the peace, and lost intimacy along the way. There was no moment where you could say, this is when everything broke. There were only many small moments that were overlooked. And then one day I realized I was standing in front of the rest of my life. No longer young, no longer with much time left to start over. At that point, it was no longer about marriage, no longer about right or wrong. It was just one person sitting with the truth that something very important had been lost without ever realizing it. That was when I finally understood. Closeness is not about how long you stay together. It's about whether you are truly there for each other. Presence is not loud. It doesn't require grand gestures. It only requires that you still ask, still listen, still want to understand the other person a little more. We loved each other, but we were not always present. And when you realize that too late, the most painful thing is not losing a relationship. It is realizing that you were there your entire life, but never truly lived with the person beside you. Now, as I say these things, my wife is still here, still living under the same roof with me, still eating the same meals. But if I'm honest, the distance between us is already very far. Not because of hatred, not because love is gone, but because we have grown too used to not walking toward each other anymore. I don't know how much time I have left, and I don't know whether we still have enough time to return to what we once were. Some things, when left for too long, are not unsaid, because they can be spoken, but because you no longer know where to begin. I'm not here to ask for advice. At this age, I've passed the stage of finding answers just for myself. I only hope that my story can do one small thing, be a gentle warning for those who still have time. If you are in a long-term relationship, ask yourself honestly, do you still truly talk to the person beside you? Not asking out of habit, not talking about tasks to be done, but genuinely wanting to know what they are thinking, whether they are happy or sad, how they are changing. When was the last time you felt curious about them, not out of duty, but because you wanted to understand them a little more? Sometimes just one question is enough to keep a relationship alive for one more day. Just one moment of listening is enough to bring two people one step closer. If this story makes you think of the person beside you, share this video with them, or share it with a friend you know is living in the same silence we once lived in. And if you want, leave a comment. Just one thing you've always wanted to say to your partner, but never have. You may not need to say everything today, but don't wait until the day comes when you're still husband and wife, but no longer friends.